A shadowy club of deep state billionaires literally owns the green movement, and Congress knows all about it. Stay tuned. According to the U.S. Congress, the U.S. Senate in particular, and the Environment and Public Works Committee, there is something called the Billionaires Club that is showering massive amounts of dark money that they're running through all these scam shell corporations and nonprofit groups and moving it from 501c3s to 501c4s. And these shadowy billionaires literally run and control the so-called green movement, the alleged movement to save the environment. According to the report, this network might also be violating federal laws in its effort to seize control of the regulatory apparatus of the United States, elect its operatives into elected offices, and push its radical agenda on America. And this is all according to a report that was put out by the Republicans on the U.S. Senate Environment and Public Works Committee some years ago. So this is not new. Unfortunately, nothing ever really happened. According to the report, this billionaires club has now purchased so much power that it's using its own agents in the bureaucracy to further fleece the American taxpayer and then take our money and hand it out to their front groups and their astroturf groups. It's unbelievable, but that is what the Senate investigators found. Now, we have top deep state insiders like David Rockefeller, like Bill Gates, who have been deeply involved in all of this. In 2017, there was another report put out by a wonderful nonprofit think tank in Washington, D.C., called the Energy and Environment Legal Institute. This report was called The Rockefeller Way, the Family's Covert Climate Change Plan. And what this report explains is that under the guise of fighting man-made global warming, the Rockefeller dynasty is ripping off the American people, enriching itself. They're bankrolling fake journalism, propaganda, academia, so they can buy themselves some professors. They're engaging in stirring up politically motivated so-called investigations by state attorneys general that are in their pocket, and it's just unbelievable the amount of influence that they have purchased. According to this report, billionaire extremist George Soros is also a big part of these efforts. Now, the Billionaires Club that was identified in this U.S. Senate report, their goal is to crush the oil and gas industry using government power as their weapon of choice. The goal of this, and this also came out in the Rockefeller Way plan, was for them to gain control over the energy market and for them to make a whole lot more money. The Rockefeller report says, not surprisingly, the Rockefellers are heavily invested in renewable energy, very much like the billionaire Tom Steyer, right, who wanted to bankrupt American coal producers and shut down coal in America while he was very heavily invested in coal in China. Apparently, Chinese coal isn't bad for the planet. American coal kills the planet. Okay, that's if you're a billionaire deep state insider. Now, the Rockefellers are no strangers to these kinds of tactics. In fact, in the report that was put out by the Energy and Environment Legal Institute, this is very much like what John D. Rockefeller did, using shady so-called business tactics to bankrupt competitors, to crush the competition, and to get a virtual monopoly over the U.S. energy industry back in the 1880s. Back in 2016, the Rockefeller Family Fund even hosted a secretive meeting at its headquarters. They brought together these key climate activists, alarmists, political hacks, and even government officials under the direction of Rockefeller Family Fund Director Lee Wasserman and other statist radicals. And according to a memo that was obtained by the Washington Free Beacon, their goal was to wage war on the oil companies, and they were going to do this by, among other things, manufacturing so-called scandals using state prosecutors to troll these companies, to go on fishing expeditions to try to obtain documents that would incriminate these companies and individuals. And of course, this eventually morphed into an effort to even prosecute climate deniers, people who disagree with the man-made global warming scam. So, according to the Senate report, the one about the Billionaires Club, these billionaires use the guise of philanthropy to cover up their activities so that the IRS won't pay attention, so that all of this gets to be tax exempt. They go to great lengths to conceal their activities and to insulate themselves from the damage they're doing to the U.S. economy and to the average American, who pays for this in higher taxes, higher energy prices, higher costs for everything they buy at the store, because of course everybody needs energy for goods to move to the store, for agriculture to take place, for transportation, for ships to move. All of it takes energy. And this study, I mean, it's just absolutely incredible. They talk about this hugely wealthy, tiny cabal of deep state billionaires. They don't use the term deep state; it wasn't in vogue yet, but who are just basically doing whatever they want, operating completely lawlessly in secret. They're coordinating with the fake media. They're creating these swarms of astroturf groups that dominate environmental policymaking in the United States through the control of the out of control EPA, and they are undermining the free market system and the national security of the United States, which depends, of course, on our resource security. We have to be able to have the resources we need to power our economy, to power our military, and this billionaires club is undermining all of that. This 92-page study, fascinating. It's called The Chain of Environmental Command: How a Club of Billionaires and Their Foundations Control the Environmental Movement and Obama's EPA. Obviously, this was released under the Obama administration, but not much has changed, unfortunately. Trump tried to put in a really good guy, Scott Pruitt. They drummed him out with fake scandals. Now we're back to the same old lunacy over at the EPA trying to regulate everything. And the report, when it came out from the Senate, was almost completely ignored by the media, by the fake media, except those that tried to discredit it and say it was a big conspiracy theory. But for the most part, your average American has never heard of this report on the Billionaires Club, the deep state club that runs the environmental movement. It's very obvious why that is. Senator David Vitter, who was the senior Republican on this Senate committee, gave a lot of insightful comments.
There are billionaires and millionaires, huge foundations that are at the top tier of this network. And it's a very complex, convoluted network and organization, I think, to completely defeat transparency and not allow anybody to effectively follow the money. But I think we did in our work pretty effectively, and we showed how this club of billionaires directly impacts and guides Obama EPA policy.
He also said in a press release, there's an unbelievable amount of money behind the environmental movement and far too much collusion between far left environmental groups and the Obama EPA. He says this report really gets to the core of tracking the money and exposing the collusion. Now, he did stop short of saying there was a criminal conspiracy afoot, but he said the operations of this billionaires club were clearly designed to remain in the shadows. According to the report, this network relies on a, quote, incredibly sophisticated system of front groups exploiting loopholes in the tax club. The Billionaires Club involves this close-knit network of like-minded funders, environmental activists, and government bureaucrats who specialize in manufacturing phony grassroots movements and in promoting bogus propaganda disguised as science and news to spread an anti-fossil energy message to the unknowing public. Are you guys starting to get the picture? This is just how the deep state operates in all sorts of spheres. On the environmental front, it's just very obvious. The machinations, the strategies they use are really interesting. So the report talks about how this network funds fake scientific research. Then this fake scientific research is peddled by fake media outlets that is also being funded by this network. Outlets like the Huffington Post, Mother Jones, right, the communist magazine, that are also being funded by this Billionaires Club. Here's a direct quote from the report. In one example, a story reporting on a Park Foundation-supported anti-fracking study was reproduced by a Park-funded news organization through a Park-funded media collaboration, where it was then further disseminated on Twitter by the maker of Park-backed anti-fracking movies. Okay, so every step of the process, they're being funded by these shadowy foundations, by this shadowy network of billionaires seeking to destroy our independence, destroy our free markets, destroy our companies, destroy our energy security, and on and on. They list three radical outfits in particular that are at the core of all this. They talk about the Environmental Grantmakers Association, the Democracy Alliance, and the Divest Invest movement. Obviously, there's other components of this. It talks about the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, right, from the Rockefeller dynasty. It talks about the Schmidt Family Foundation, created by the head of Google, Eric Schmidt, who, of course, is an attendee at Bilderberg, who, deeply involved in the deep state. And then, obviously, the Heinz Family Foundation, affiliated with former Secretary of State John Kerry and his incredibly wealthy wife. Another one of the dominant outfits in this pseudo-environmentalist movement, and we've talked about this before here on this channel, is the California-based Sea Change Foundation. This is the single largest funder of the Climate Action Network. According to this Senate report, the group relies heavily on funding from this shady Bermuda-based company, front group, that, according to the Washington Free Beacon, appears only to exist on paper. Sea Change then takes all this dark money, which, by the way, later lawmakers in Congress found out that some of this money was coming from the Kremlin, from Russian energy interests. The Gazprom, the state-owned energy giant, was funneling this money to this shell corporation in Bermuda called Klein Limited, and then this Bermuda corporation was sending it to the Sea Change Foundation, and then the Sea Change Foundation was distributing it to all the American companies. We actually asked the Russian delegation. We were at the UN Climate Summit in Madrid in 2019. We asked the Russian delegation and Climate Action Network about this. Check out these clips. Hey guys, I did some research and I found out that the Climate Action Network is funded by the Sea Change Foundation. Congress did an investigation and they found out that this was funded by Russian energy interests. I'm curious, does anybody have a comment? Is Russian energy funding this whole demonstration? No comment? Any comment?
Hey, we're about to take a photo.
Is Russian energy funding this action? He doesn't want anybody to talk to me because I've got a serious question.
Oh, is it climate change denier? Oh, okay. This guy's a climate change denier. Nobody talks to him.
I'm curious, is Russian money funding the demonization of the United States here?
The demonization?
We just got first place at being the worst, right? And you're demonizing the United States.
I have no idea what you're talking about, and I'm not really sure this is the right place for this conversation.
Okay, I can send you the report from the U.S. Congress.
Hey, bye-bye.
So obviously no comment from the Climate Action Network. Disappointing, but that was expected. We figure probably those guys have no idea. They're being played as dupes, just like most of the people at this conference, it seems. So we are going to go try to ask the Russians about this funding for Klein Limited going to the Sea Change Foundation and then going to environmental groups in the United States. Hi, my name's Alex Newman. I'm with the New American Magazine.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
We're looking at this Climate Action Network. It's been receiving funding from the Sea Change Foundation, which we learned was getting money from the Kremlin going through a shell corporation in Bermuda called Klein Limited. The U.S. Congress said this in a report, and so we're just wondering, is there some kind of quid pro quo or anything like that going on?
If we do not, how to say, the U.S. Congress is not our headquarters. So you should address U.S. Congress rather than anybody else to comment their words.
Okay.
I cannot comment and I can't speak for U.S. Congress. I am sorry about that.
Okay, but you don't think it's true that the Kremlin was sending money to environmental groups in America? Well, very good. Well, that's what Congress said in the report, so that's why I asked. Congress probably thinks that's funny too. Well, sir, thank you very much. We'll try to come back by later, huh? All right. Nice to meet you. Have a good day. Thank you. Obviously, they didn't want to talk. And why would you want to talk when you're secretly funneling millions of dollars to useful idiots in America who are going to destroy the American energy industry so that Gazprom can take over the world, right? Why would you want to talk about that? I wouldn't want to talk about that if I were them. So no surprise that they pretend like this is funny, right? Other sources of funding for the Sea Change Foundation include billionaire population control fanatic Bill Gates, right? The guy who funded Common Core. The guy who's now demanding we all take his crazy vaccines. Another guy, of course, was the late David Rockefeller, retail giant Walmart, and on, right? So these uber wealthy financiers of this AstroTurf network, they use phony tax-deductible charitable contributions to their 501c3s. Then after they go to the 501c3s and they get all their tax deductions, they shift them around to 501c4s that pour money into elections, lobbying, and other things like that, trying to get their minions elected and their preferred policies approved. Now, there are some very real questions about whether this complies with the law, and these are raised in the Senate report. Unfortunately, the Justice Department, under the control of the deep state, never really did any true investigations, much less indictments for all this stuff. But it gives you a good sense of what this Billionaires Club is up to. Now, one of the things that they do, according to the report, these entities propagate the false notion that they are independent, citizen-funded groups working altruistically. In reality, they work in tandem with wealthy donors to maximize the value of the donors' tax-deductible donations and leverage their combined resources to influence elections and policy outcomes with a focus on the EPA. The report found that an elite group of left-wing millionaires and billionaires directs and controls the far-left environmental movement, which in turn controls major policy decisions and lobbies on behalf of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. And then they have more scams, right? Then they go get grants from the EPA. Then they sue the EPA in court, and the EPA says, oh my goodness, you're right. I can't believe we didn't pass that policy we should have passed. Here, have $1 million for your troubles of taxpayer money, right? It's called the sue and settle scam. Another scam whereby these radical extremists who are destroying America, working for the deep state, extract money from the American taxpayer to further their war on America. According to the study, this is a deliberate, meticulous, intended to mislead the public. The probe documented over $250 million in fundraising from just 15 organizations, not even including the money that they're swiping from U.S. taxpayers. Listen to this also. Although startling in its findings, the report covers only a small fraction of the amount of money that is being secreted and moved around. It would be virtually impossible to examine this system completely, given the enormity of this carefully coordinated effort and the lack of transparency surrounding it. Are you getting this, guys? Now, we know that the global warming industry was getting something like $360 billion in tax money every single year to promote this hysteria. Think about that. That's like $1 billion per day. Meanwhile, the EPA and their AstroTurf groups are lobbying for even more money for these operations. This report proves that the Obama EPA has been deliberately staffed at the highest levels with far-left environmental activists who have worked hand in glove with their former colleagues. The green revolving door at EPA has become a valuable asset for the far left and their wealthy donors. In addition to providing insider access to important policy decisions, it appears activists now at the EPA also funnel government money through grants to their former employers and colleagues. Okay, guys, this is a corruption. These are conflicts of interest. This very much smells like a conspiracy. And to give you a sense of how hypocritical they are, there was this a fake study that appeared in the journal Climatic Change by Drexel University sociologist Robert Bruley, and he said there was this vast web of dark money funding climate skeptics, or they call them climate deniers.
This guy's a climate change denier. Nobody talks to him.
Well, it turns out it was all a fraud, right? It got reported breathlessly. The UK Guardian said, oh my goodness, their headline was, conservative groups have spent $1 billion a year on the effort to deny science and oppose climate action or action on climate change, okay? Unbelievable. And then the truth came out, okay? Forbes reported, the Heartland Institute found that this study was an absolute joke. Let me give you just a sense of how much of a joke this study was. 2 out of the top 3 organizations they said were climate denier organizations were actually global warming alarmists shilling for carbon taxes to solve the alleged problem of global warming. So from this alleged billion of dark money that was supposedly going to conservative efforts to deny the science of climate change, they actually narrowed that down to about $6.4 million. Okay, only 3.2 million of that actually opposes global warming activism. Anyways, that just gives you a sense of how dishonest these people are. In the investigation from the Senate, they said foundations appear to be colluding with almost every department of the Obama administration. That is from, Ron Arnold from the Center for the Defense of Free Enterprise. It's not just the big green donors. So it's time for Congress to investigate. Anyways, guys, I hope you're getting the picture here. This is a scam. The American people are being robbed. They're being looted. Our economy is being destroyed. The free market is being destroyed. And it's all to supposedly keep us safe from the big, bad, green boogeyman that doesn't exist except in the fevered imaginations of the useful idiots who are being paid by the Billionaires Club. If that's not deep state shenanigans, I don't know what is, folks. It's time for these people to be exposed. It's time for Congress to do a legitimate investigation of all this. If there are crimes being committed, it's time for prosecutors to step in. This is a fraud. This is a scam in the truest sense of the word. They're trying to terrify you with fake monsters and fake boogeymen so that you will give up your freedom, your economy, your prosperity, your national sovereignty, and all the rest of it, right? It's time for this to end. Now, fortunately, the American people have a very powerful weapon against the deep state, and that's called the U.S. Constitution. If the U.S. Constitution were being enforced, all of this nonsense would be over, right? They wouldn't have an EPA to terrorize the American people, to terrorize farmers and ranchers, to terrify and terrorize landowners. They wouldn't have all these bureaucracies to fund their astroturf groups. And even if they did have all that money, what good would it do? Because there would be no totalitarian government apparatus to impose the totalitarian policies that these people are pursuing. So President Trump has tried to put a dent in this. That's very good, but a whole lot more needs to be done, folks. Our liberty, the future of our nation, the future of our economic well-being, all depends on stopping the deep state, the Billionaires Club that intends to enslave you under green global tyranny. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe, hit like, hit that little bell so that you'll be notified whenever we post new videos. And also, please make sure to share this video with your friends. Email's a great way to do it. Remember, there are powerful forces working to steal our freedom and destroy our country. We need to work together, expose those behind the deep state. Otherwise, you can kiss your liberties goodbye.